They like the Judas was to Jesus. They only here to cause confusion. We here to bring money and to bring change. They here to cause confusion. All these weak rappers, Nas, all these suckers, they battling off of East and West like this is a game. This ain't no game.
Tupac had a habit of making enemies, and I ain't saying he didn't have ops or nothing. I'm also not saying the homies turned enemies weren't snakes the whole time. What I'm saying is that Pac was a bull in the 90s, a thugger bull that wasn't scared of bulldozing anyone who crossed him all the way to New Jersey. There was blood on the dance floor if you found yourself on a Pac track. Homies who wasn't wise enough would test the GOAT, see their career skyrocket, cause Pac diss them, then get stranded in the space of irrelevance. And in a few cases, shit actually got real. Some homies died. And when push came to shove, they said Tupac did it. Well, let's check that out. Verify the facts, you feel me? If it's all real talk, then how did Tupac kill his friends and enemies? Stretch. Everything changed between Big Stretch and Pac after Pac got shot. And I ain't talking about the hit that took his life. I'm talking about the Quad Studio shooting of '94. After that event, Pac became paranoid. His trust turned into extreme suspicion, and many homies turned into enemies. One of such homies was Big Stretch. Before the Quad shooting, they was good. They was making music together. Big Stretch was even in Pac's group Thug Life. Then the Quad shooting happened, and everything changed for the absolute worst. It all started out with his man James Jimmy Henchman Roseman, a notorious music manager who had reportedly offered Pac $7,000 to stop by Quad Studios in Times Square to record a verse for his client Little Sean. But Pac was hesitant. He felt something was off, but he eventually went against his better instincts and agreed to the session as he needed the cash to offset legal costs from the sexual assault case that was still pending over his head. He called up some of his homies, including Stretch, to tag along. When they arrived, they saw Lil Cease, who was a member of the Bad Boy record label circle through Biggie's side group, Junior Mafia. Lil Cease was watching the sidewalk from above. He greeted them, but when they got in the lobby, 3 men pulled pistols to rob Tupac, who resisted and allegedly got shot 5 times. Stretch was there, and he didn't do nothing. And this is what got Tupac paranoid. In fact, he began to suspect henchman Biggie, who he was cool until that very incident, and most of all, Stretch. Of Stretch's involvement, he said, "I was like, what should I do? I'm thinking Stretch is going to fight." He was towering over those niggas. From what I know about the criminal element, if niggas come to rob you, they always hit the big nigga first. But they didn't touch Stretch, they came straight to me. To make matters a little worse, Stretch began hanging out with Biggie after this incident, and this happened while Pac was spending a 1.5 years in prison for the sexual assault case. And in the words of Pac, Stretch never came to see him. Now, there was no evidence that implicated Stretch in the hit against Pac. In fact, investigators like Greg Kading believe that the setup, while real, was actually set up by henchmen to teach Pac a lesson for always running his mouth. If Stretch was in on it, he was just a casual observer who was in self-preservation mode. Because you mustn't forget, it was Pac that brought Stretch to the studio, not the other way around. But betrayal is betrayal. So when the heat became a little too much for Stretch to handle, he came to his own defense, publicly responding that he didn't have a gun, and there was no way on earth he was trying to take fists to a gunfight. But even the gun part was under dispute. According to Greg Kading, Tupac wasn't shot 5 times. He shot himself while he was trying to reach for his gun to retaliate for the beatdown he was getting in the Quad studio lobby. Stretch himself would say that he only heard 1 shot. Now, I ain't taking either Pac or Stretch's words as gospel truth. I'm just trying to maintain objectivity here. And in that spirit of objectivity, Stretch moved funny while Pac was incarcerated, trying to get Pac's girlfriend at the time, Desiree Smith.
And, he called me and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna come, stop by, drop this off to you, boom. But when he came, that wasn't the conversation. And that's factual. He was like, so, what's up with you?
When Pac heard this, homie must have felt the betrayal was complete. A year later, on the same day that Pac got shot just a year earlier, Stretch was shot dead.
Walker was only about 3 blocks away from his home right here. He didn't make it, and his family doesn't know why.
Now, is that a coincidence or what? Well, I'll leave that to you. And for the record, Pac denied any involvement in the demise of his former friend. In an interview with hip-hop magazine The Source, Tupac addressed the situation, stating, for the record, that he didn't send out the hit that took Stretch's life. For the record, Pac didn't attend Stretch's funeral. Cynthia Dolores Tucker.
Thus, images that degrade our dignity and are an insult to our children, our families, and communities concern us too. And that includes all this gangster rap and misogynist lyrics. Music that glorifies and promotes violence with guns, knives, or drugs.
If you didn't know the Tupac connection and you had just a faint idea of who this woman was, you'd wonder how the hell a rapper would have a beef with an activist of this caliber. I mean, wasn't Tupac an activist himself?
Yeah.
And something's not right, buddy. And Eddie Murphy, with all that dough he's making, he hasn't done nothing for us.
He does a lot of charity.
What charity doesn't get to the ghetto. Everybody knows that. Everybody who ever came out the ghetto knows they never saw any charity.
They don't see the charity
No,
benefits
that goes
we
to
all
the
go
suburban black people.
But this was a different version of Tupac, the pre-Suge Knight gangster rap Tupac, and his music didn't sit well with Cynthia Dolores Tucker, who was the former national chair of the National Political Congress of Black Women. Tucker was a vocal critic of rap music, particularly what she referred to as gangster rap. She believed that this genre glorified violence, promoted the use of guns, knives, and drugs, and denigrated and defamed women. Tupac, never one to back down from a fight, couldn't remain silent in the face of Tucker's criticism. In his song How Do You Want It on the album All Eyes on Me, Pac rapped, "See Dolores Tucker use a mother instead of trying to help a you destroy a brother." Tupac's lyrics became a platform for expressing his frustration with Tucker's attempts to ban the music he and millions of others loved. He practically murdered Tucker's public image, at least to impressionable young hip-hop fans, which was, quite frankly, every black kid. Pac made her the enemy, and Tucker knew this, and that is why she didn't take Tupac's words lightly. She filed a lawsuit against him, arguing that he portrayed her as a traitor, knowing that his millions of fans considered him a godlike figure. Tucker claimed that his lyrics were not mere opinions, but rather invitations for his fans to eliminate her. Was she wrong? I'll leave that for you to decide. But it'll be hard to say she didn't have a point, even if that wasn't really Tupac's true intention. She argued that the portrayal of her in Tupac's songs was a deliberate attempt to hurt her and hinder her efforts to uplift her fellow African Americans. And before you come for me in the comments section, Tucker was actually an OG who had a lot for the black community, especially black American women. She was with Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. during the historic 1965 Selma to Montgomery marches. She also helped raise funds for the NAACP. Tucker was also directly responsible for the Pennsylvania's governor's appointment of more women judges and more women and African Americans to boards and commissions than ever before. And she was behind the efforts that made Pennsylvania one of the first states to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. So you gotta know she wasn't just some random hater. In a way, she was a pillar of the community. But she and Pac were on two sides of this ideological fence, and soon enough, they had to settle it out in court. In court, the judge saw Tupac's references to Tucker as expressions of his opinion, rather than factual statements. They ruled that Tucker was not portrayed as a traitor in a defamatory sense, but rather as someone who was out to hurt rather than help her community. Despite Tucker's efforts, Tupac's lyrics were ultimately protected as a form of artistic expression. The beef was bitter, and there are no indications that Pac and Tucker reconciled before his tragic demise in '96. But if you think this beef was bitter, then you haven't heard of his beef with a former sitting vice president of the United States, Dan Quayle. And this one involved some actual killing, Dan Quayle. The beef with Dan Quayle started with a particularly tragic event back in April 11th, 1992.
Ronald Ray Howard, a 19-year-old ex-con from Houston, drives a stolen Chevy Blazer down Highway 59 towards Jackson County, Texas, about 100 miles west of Houston. On the way, he passes 43-year-old State Trooper Bill Davidson, who's patrolling the rural stretch of road.
Just 5 months earlier, Tupac had released Tupacalypse Now, the socially conscious iconic album that really gave a showcase of the force of nature Tupac was to become. Well, Howard, the 19-year-old ex-con, was allegedly listening to the album when he got pulled over for speeding. And because he was in a stolen truck and because he didn't want to go back to jail, he made the terrible decision to shoot the state trooper and make a quick getaway. He says his intention was to hurt the trooper, but the bullet went into Trooper Bill Davidson's throat. 3 days later, the man was dead. Now, you know how politicians can be. At the time, George Bush Sr.'s Vice President Dan Quayle was really loud about his morality and how it wasn't really being reflected in the country he and his big daddy were presiding over. Funny enough, before he would come for Pac's music, the man had been at Hollywood's throat, critiquing them from every angle. The violence, the sex, practically the whole package. So when this incident happened, and when it was leaked to the public that the 19-year-old ex-con had been listening to Tupac at the time the crime was committed, Dan Quayle shifted his attention to the music industry, joined the hip-hop group chat, and basically rained a media firestorm on Tupac. His argument was that Tupac's music had a negative influence on society, particularly on the younger generation. But you know what they say about publicity, good or bad, it helps. The vice president's critique made more people listen to Pac's music, even if it was just out of pure curiosity. So the vice president turned up the heat to 11. On September 23, 1992, about 5 months after the incident, the vice president made a bold move by ordering Interscope Records to withdraw Tupac's album Tupacalypse Now from stores yours. He reiterated his stance that the record was responsible for the death of the Texas state trooper who was shot to death, Ronald Ray Howard. Quayle's decision to target Tupac's album was met with support from many within politics and law enforcement who saw it as a way to protect society from what they perceived as harmful influences. And soon enough, Tupac had to say something back to the vice president.
Right there, the vice president talked about me, a young from the hood. He know me, he want my shit off the shelf. Not Megadeth, not Killer Cop, all these other out there, all these white, god damn, they came after me, young Pac.
But the vice president wasn't the only one accusing Tupac of influencing the murder of the cop with his music. When the trial of Ronald Ray Howard came around the corner, his defense attorney and the prosecution were using the same claim, even if it was for different purposes. On one hand, the defense was trying to lessen the charges against Howard by claiming Tupac's music was what worsened the situation. On the other hand, the prosecution claimed that if Howard was so easily influenced, then he should be found guilty and sent to the death row. Yeah, the 19-year-old had his life in the balance. Eventually, the young man was found guilty. And in the months that followed, Tupac would find a diss for the vice president in a verse on the single threat, Boom Bang Boom. It's a stick-up Vice President Dan Quayle eat a dick-up feud with Jimmy Henchman and Haitian Jack.
I tell people, you don't really know Pac, because Pac don't even know Pac. He got the right name. There's definitely two Pacs there. It's not one, it's two of them.
Everyone talks about how Diddy and Biggie probably ruined Tupac's life. If you think they were the only ones, then you don't know the history well, homie. Before Diddy became a problem, Pac was already moving with trouble. The kind of trouble that Mike Tyson and even Biggie had warned him about. In true Pac fashion, the rapper didn't listen. Tupac continued to associate with them. He was impressed by their lifestyles and found himself drawn to their world. And in a way, by associating with these gangsters, he killed all chances of longevity to his career. The first gangster was Jimmy Henchman, a well-known personality in the music industry, was not only involved in the industry, but was also notorious for his involvement in criminal activity. Today, he is a convict serving a life sentence for leading a major drug trade. However, he would confess to the quad setup that got Tupac shot in '94. So Pac was right. Of course he was. And that's because he had already been warned. But even before the quad shooting, Tupac had a sexual assault that almost put a home turned into a nightmare. As they sat side in the vehicle, the tension between them reached its point. Eyewitness that Megan attempted the SUV, seeking to distance from the escalating conflict. But before she could escape, he allegedly shouted, "Bitch," and began firing shots at her feet. The sound of gunshots shattered the night, leaving everyone in disbelief. Megan, in excruciating pain, fell to the ground, blood staining the pavement. Of the situation was on video as police arrived at the scene, everyone out of the vehicle with their hands in the air. Megan's bloody footprints marked the sidewalk, a haunting reminder of the violence that had just. As the investigation unfolded, Megan bravely came forward, accusing Tory Lanez as the perpetrator. She detailed the events of that fate.
I'm not married, you know what I'm saying? That's not a crime for me to be promiscuous. It's not a crime for me to be with any girl I want to be with. It's a crime for that girl to turn that into a rape charge.
Of support from fans and fellow artists who rallied behind her in society. In her testimony, Megan claimed after the shooting, Tory approached her, apologized for his actions, offered her exchange for her silence. He begged not to say anything, seeing his probation status and the potential consequence face. Tory Lanez, on the other hand, vehemently denied the allegations, maintaining his innocence. He took to social media to defend himself, claiming that there was more to the story than what had been portrayed. Despite his claim, the evidence and testimony seemed to paint a different picture. Megan had pictures of her injury in a now deleted Instagram post TMZ reposted. She included a screenshot of the caption where she addressed others and stated shot while walking away with her back turned. It wasn't until August 20 that Megan revealed Tory as the alleged shooter. She went live on Instagram to a fake story and narratives created by the public, due to her not initially revealing the shooter's identity. For Tory, the alleged shooting incident had a...
And a lot of people think, you know, that it has to do with your voice and stuff. I really don't hear a voice thing going on, you know. I just think it's a lot of personality. I just get in here and I have fun with the people, and I think I'm doing what comes naturally to me. And for anybody who's young and trying to figure out, am I getting too preachy?
Yes, give it a minute.
All right.
Profound impact on his career. The accusations tarnished his reputation to widespread backlash from fans and fellow artists. He distanced themselves from him, refusing to collaborate or support his music. The end became a stain on his legacy. overshadowing his previous two. Her enemies were mostly celebrities, and one of them was Pac. It all started off with a claim that Wendy made of Pac getting assaulted in prison. It was an insane and crazy claim to make, and while most knew it was false, Pac had to make a point of setting the record straight.
See, the media, they make me act like I would act. I'm in jail, they reporting that I'm getting raped in jail. I'm sitting in jail, niggas is banging on my door going, Pac, win! Win! Why you ain't say that? What's going on? Talking about I got raped in jail. Ain't this a bitch?
Now it would have ended there. It should have ended there. But then an opportunistic small-time rapper from New Jersey named Chino XL decided to capitalize on rumors started by Wendy Williams. Seeking fame and attention, Chino took the opportunity to diss Tupac in his songs, including a feature from another rapper, Rascass, called Riot. By this industry, I'm trying not to get like Tupac in jail. Tupac, upon hearing the disrespectful lyrics, was not pleased. In a radio interview, he vowed to beat Chino XL's ass, making it clear that he would not tolerate such disrespect.
Chino's nothing.
Quino X, we ain't doing it with none of them.
Okay.
Quino X, I heard he was a transvestite though. That's just, I ain't the one that told you this. But I heard that's why the long hair, I heard.
Chino, in response, released several songs, including a lengthy freestyle on a New York radio station. The lyrics were filled with insults and provocations, attempting to further escalate the feud. However, after Tupac's untimely death, Chino expressed regret for his lyrics, acknowledging that he was a fan of Tupac, just like everyone else. He was just doing it for attention. It was all a game to him. Looking at Pac's life, you kind of get the sense that Pac took it all insanely real. Meanwhile, Pac found time for a Wendy diss track with the incredibly vile Why You Turn On Me. Revenge is a payback, bitch. Get your gat, Wendy Williams, and I pray you choke on the next down your throat for turning on me. Till the day Pac died, the two of them remained enemies. And while Wendy might have outlived Pac, from the way things have gone for her in recent years, I don't think it'll be right to say she got the last laugh. Nay-yes.
They like the Judas was to Jesus. They only here to cause confusion. We here to bring money and to bring change. They here to cause confusion. All these weak rappers, Nas, all these suckers, they battling off of East and West like this is a game. This ain't no game.
Getting in a beef with Nas is almost always the recipe for career suicide. But you could also say the same about beefing with Tupac. Because while Nas would use genius poetic devices to deconstruct the value of your existence, Pac would straight up defile you, stare in your eyes and say your name while he was at it. So what happens when the unstoppable force meets the immovable object? Well, we got a load of that action when Tupac misinterpreted Nas's July 1996 song, The Message, as a diss towards him. The particular lyrics he took a slight to went like this: fake thugs, no love, you get the slug. Kinda sounds like a diss. At Pac, if he was around the allegations the rapper was enduring at the time in the early 90s, so when Shakur heard them lyrics, he bared his fangs and snapped back hard on Against All Odds, accusing Nas of copying him. This little nigga named Nas think he lived like me. Talking about he left the hospital, took 5 like me, you live in fantasies, and God, I reject your deposit. Then in the third verse, Pac went even deeper. Lord, listen to me, God don't like ugly. It was written, Ayo Nas, your whole damn style is bitten. You heard my melody. This sounds like Rakim. Now at the time the song was released, everyone was expecting a response from Nas. They were expecting him to lay out Pac like a turkey at Thanksgiving, but what they got was silence. For most, it was like Nas didn't speak or want to speak on it. He didn't respond. Did Nas take the high road? Well, maybe he did. But in July 2020, an unreleased Nas song, Real surfaced online, which contained bars insulting Tupac. This was supposed to be the rebuttal, and as you would expect, it was equal parts genius and equal parts scalding, from tube socks and Timbs to blue rocks and bins. Who got the ends? The type of NGA Tupac pretends. To all N-gas who shine, guess who got revenge? I won't showboat, my flow choke you. On top of that, Nas would also clarify that the track that caused this beef in the first place was actually directed at the Notorious Big. So did the beef end before Pac's demise? Sadly enough, yes. And I say sadly because it was a week before the rapper's death.
Oh yeah, we had a great convo, man. He was like, he explained that he, he thought I was dissing him, and I heard that he was dissing me at clubs, and last person I was even thinking about when I wrote that record.
The two met in Central Park before the 1996 MTV Video Music Awards and ended their feud, with Tupac promising to remove any disses aimed at Nas from the official album release. However, Tupac was killed before any edits to the album could be made. It was a beef that was never meant to be, but it was iconic. And if Pac was still alive today, it might have been the one relationship with a rival artiste that he saved before he could get a chance to kill.